on with the presentation. So this is a short interview that aired about 3 or 4 weeks ago on National Public Radio.
You have come from the islands of the Caribbean, but many who want to learn to play or build the instrument are traveling to the hills of Appalachia. A man known as the Stradivarius of Steel has put down roots in West Virginia, where he's teaching the next generation of steel drummers. West Virginia Public Broadcasting's Jeff Young reports.
There's not a palm tree in sight in Morgantown, West Virginia. The only sand is on the banks of the Monongahela River. But this Appalachian college town has become second home to the Caribbean's best-known instrument. That's because the man who created the modern steel drum calls Morgantown home. Trinidad native Ellie Mannette got a job teaching for 1 semester at West Virginia University. That was 10 years ago.
I am here to the state. For some reason, this small state generated students for me that I was looking for because I wanted to pass my skills on.
Many of Mannette's students go on to music careers. Hundreds more learn the instrument in his annual summer workshops. And even master steel drummers like Ken Professor Fillmore make the pilgrimage from Trinidad to learn from Mannette.
I played the instrument that Ellie Mannette invented. The guy who invented the piano and the violin, they're dead now. You know, so we're so lucky to have Ellie alive talking about how it started with him because he is a rare gold.
Mannette launched a small company with help from the university, and that company now supplies steel drums to some 500 school music programs around the country, as well as top-line professional musicians. Mannette spends a lot of time in his workshop with hammers in his hands, fine-tuning the notes into his drums. It's kept him remarkably fit for a 75-year-old. His shoulders are broad from a lifetime working in steel. Graying hair and a decade in academia gave him a professorial seriousness, but when talk turns to steel drums, Mannette still has the animation and energy of the brash teenager who banged on oil barrels until he heard an orchestra.
I have developed in my mind the image of a symphony in steel when I was a very young boy. I listened to classical music all day, and I always say to myself, one of these days, I'm going to build a symphony of steel, all steel drum, to some as good or better than that symphony that I'm hearing on the radio.
Pretty ambitious for a poor boy from Port of Spain in the 1940s, when Trinidad steel drums were little more than overturned trash cans, simple things that played only rhythm.
And this now will go on 24 hours a day in a backyard. So you could imagine the racket that was going on when the neighbors was very concerned about the noise level, and they chase you away from one yard to the other. They don't want you to walk here. The police will come, take your drums away and smash them up, and it's a heck of a story.
Those all-night sessions damaged the drums, and Mannette made a breakthrough discovery while beating one back into shape. The smaller dents he made carried more notes.
So I said, well, if you get 4 notes in a small can like this, maybe if you get a little bigger can, we should be able to get more notes by doing the same thing. And then it gradually moved from that into the first one ever, with what we call the modern steel band, the 55-gallon drum, is this one right here, 1946. They could play like a... See, that's what it was. And this was a great achievement at the time because you were playing this here, and then you came up with this here.
Mannette had taken a sound that existed only in his mind and made it solid as steel, and a crude folk instrument became modern and melodic. But that was just the start. Over the next 50 years, Mannette developed 7 versions of the instrument to give the steel band a full voice, from the high ring of his original pans to the rumble of the bass. So the instrument now has an orchestra's range, but much of the steel band repertoire still sounds stuck on a cruise vacation, and that's far too limited for Mannette.
I wanted to be incorporated into the conventional orchestras of the world, like a symphony.
One of Mannette's students transcribed this Bach piece from strings to steel. move the instrument beyond calypso to classical, and to come up with the next innovations in steel drums.
Because this instrument is going to blossom. And for me to fade away, or retire, die tomorrow with the skills in my hands and in my mind, it will be a loss for the art form. And these young people are going to take it on and they're going to move with it. And I expect them to carry on my work further for the future. I expect that to happen.
For NPR News, I'm Jeff Young in Morgantown, West Virginia.
NPR's
Just to get an idea of the impact that Ellie's had, the BBC also ran an interview with him, and he told me just a little while ago that over 43 million people heard the broadcast. So it's pretty incredible exposure for the type of work that he's doing. I've known Ellie for about 20 years now. I met him here when I was a student, and it's amazing that your lifelong relationships with the art form that you love, and percussion and steel drums. In 1991, I went into East Carolina University, and I invited my good friend Phil Pinay from West Virginia to come down and just be there and check it out. And through that meeting, it turned out that Phil invited him to be artist in residence, visiting faculty member at West Virginia, and it's created an incredible workshop there. So with Ellie today is Kaethe George, who's been his assistant for over 20 years and has been researched steel drums, has been a major driving force in the business of Mannette steel drums. If you guys would give them a big Texas welcome.
Thank you, all of you. I guess I don't have a whole lot to say because the NPR interview sort of covered everything that I was going to say. And that's giving you really an appreciation and an introduction to the person that is Ellie Mannette. Ellie is regarded as the father young to be involved, but he remembers seeing this tremendous group of people walking and the sound, the thumping of the bamboo plant or the stems. And then of course, because you have what was a lot of people out there, carnival celebration, partying, there's drinking, there was fighting, there was, there was the stick fighting where it was violent, it was exciting for a young boy to see this kind of thing. And Ellie said it was that kind of image that sort of stayed with him, and it was like, what is this thing? And he kind of wanted to continue to sort of be involved, to be a part of it. And I think that's a part of the reason why this instrument survives like it does and it will continue to flourish, is because there is a passion that is connected to its history, and you will see it in the life of Ellie. It is at this point that I'd like to ask Ellie to start to walk over, because what he's going to do for you, if you can imagine, it's not often in history that we have an opportunity to be in the presence of a creator. And this is someone who has created an instrument, who builds the instrument, who performs on the instrument, as well as composes music for that instrument. And it's a rare opportunity, and we do what we can to travel across the country, get young people have an opportunity to experience that. And so at this point, I will turn you over to Dr. Ellie Mannette.
I'm here today, young folks. It's a pleasure seeing all of you. And this is one of the most important things to me in my life today, to see the number of young people involved and interested into the art form, which I have struggled so hard to develop. I go around the United States talking to young people like you, all the major universities, and when I see your young faces all lit up as I speak about the art form and how it arrived where it is, I feel very good to know that my struggle was not in vain. And what I'm here to speak about today is the steel drum as we know it today. We're going to also give you a demonstration as to what it was, and the rhythm played at the time, and how it managed to merge from that to this. I don't know where it's going to go from here, but as a person with a very creative mind and vision, I always feel that it will be better, and if ultimately will find themselves in the conventional orchestras of the world, I might not be around to see this happen, but my endeavor is to train young people for them to follow my legacy, high standards, professionalism, integrity. And I say to some of you in my lecture that this is what has brought me from trash cans into being a bad boy, a vagabond, no good, whatever you want to call me at the time, to what I have become. And it's only a matter of determination, desire, and thinking properly as a young person, regardless of the environment I was in. I always had a vision as to what I could do, and I could not explain it, but I know what I was seeing and hearing, and ultimately I managed to do it. Now, the steel drum we have today, is a versatile instrument. It can play a arpeggio. Plays arpeggio. It can play calypso rhythm. Semi-classic. this instrument from that era. And there's a lot of hearsay about the speaker, ladies and gentlemen, young people. There's a lot of hearsay. And I've read several books across the country about people who wrote about the drum. And many a time I would read it in front of a professor and I say, this is wrong. This is not right at all. Because when I speak to you kids, I call you kids, but you are children. When I call you kids and I speak to you, I speak to you from a person who has lived the art form. I never read it from a catalog or script or text. Nobody spoke to me about it in the future. I never saw it in a newspaper or anything. I lived the art form. I developed the art form. I create 90% of all the instruments in existence today, except two. 90% of all the instruments being played, about 10, 11 voices, Ellie Mannette did all of them. Sheer creation and ability, observation, dedication, hard work. I was obsessed with doing it. And I would say to you in my lecture, I gave up a lot for the art form, which I would say I would not want some of you to do, because I gave up a formal education. I had a scholarship to study in London, and I gave up a scholarship to come back to Trinidad to develop crash band. And you could imagine as a poor boy in a neighborhood, family is very poor, underprivileged, and to get a scholarship, because I was pretty bright in school, and to get a scholarship, go to London, and then decide, I don't want a scholarship, I want to come home to do track band. Could you imagine that? The public was annoyed with everything that they called me a big vagabond, no good, no ambition, don't want to study, don't want to work, and don't want to do anything except play trash band. And they kicked me around the neighborhood from place to place into the idea, which I'm going to go through. And ultimately, I had in mind what a vision I was seeing in mind. I could not explain it to anybody because I could not perform it. I could not put it into practice. So what I was telling people, what I was seeing, I was here, I was, oh, you're just a vagabond, you don't want to go to school, you don't want to study, you don't want to do that. You're just a worthless young man. You give up a scholarship, you're just fighting in the backyard and throwing rocks at people. And everything to say there in my head. As a young boy, and I put the bullet, and I bit the bullet, and I came up and up and up and up, until I could have made my vision come into practice. And in so doing, the people realized that I was really seeing what I was telling them I was seeing all the time. And then they began to give me all the honors and credit, which I never looked for credit, ladies and gentlemen. I never looked for credit, I just earned it by hard work and dedication. Now, this album of this instrument that I just played for you here, I think it's a pretty good drum. It's played very well. Okay, now, how did it get here? How it got here? As Kaethe explained, we started from here, and before this, we started African drums, into tambour bamboo, into garbage cans, into paintings and street containers, into what you see here for ping pong and kind of around the neck. I'll give you an idea what it was like. And these came in slowly but short. But if I can tell anyone here, candidly, when did the art form move from one era to the other? I cannot tell you when it moved from there to there, because you wouldn't think like that. All you had is not to create. And you could not say, you're going to give a definite line as to when the art form moved from crash to ping pong, or from ping pong to pan around the neck. You could not. But it just gradually happened as it blossomed into the growth of it. Now, after the tambour bamboo the garbage can, it came to the street containers, and there's where I came in 1937 as a young boy. I would climb up on a tree, up in one of the big yards, and a lot of older men would sit. They would sit around a big fire pit, a big fire pit, and they would be playing this rhythm, these drums, which about 20 of them, and they played a lot of various rhythms. And the fire was blazing hot, and right around the big circle of the tent, they would have what they call flambeau. It was like a pole with a bottle with kerosene and lids. The lids have a 3-band bars, and they call it flambeau. And this is lit right around the tent. The fire in the middle of the tent. And in the middle of the tent, stick fighting. And they will be striking each other and shedding blood. And while the steel drum is going, and I'm a little boy up in a tree observing the stick fighting and the fire dance and the dramatic intensity of the men's faces while they play the rhythm. And I'll get goosebumps, the little boy up in the tree, and I'm kind of shaking. And ultimately, I will climb, as the evening is progress and it's finished, I will climb over the tree and get down to the yard, and I will observe the drums, because everybody's gone. I will observe the drums, and I notice the drums are like these days, but the bottom of the drum is pushed out, convex, it's a convex. And these guys are holding, sitting on a stool, and they're playing different rhythms, so they do something. And I said to myself, I want to get into this, but I was about 8 or 9 years old. And around 1938, 39, I really got a couple of bars and I started dating them myself. And I got a team of young people, like this young boy, hey, let's form a little group. And we formed a little group and we called ourselves the Old Boys. And we had the convex stuff. And I heard some gentleman in forestry and playing these same drums managed to get a few notes, something like 4 notes. And these same small drums, I could not get the pitches of the notes on the surface. All I could about at the time was just 1 or 2 notes. And just playing the rhythm. And I got kind of crazy and excited to know why could that get the guy get 4 notes and I cannot get it. So I struggled and I still could not get more than 3 notes with this convex stuff. So ladies and gentlemen, I sung the first drum ever. It's documented in all the archives of Trinidad. Ellie Mannette sung the first drum into a concave. And as a result of something into the concave, and I put a little bump something like on the up today, I managed to control the bump and to get pitchy. Then I could get 4 notes that the guy was getting. But before I did that, let me give you, I want 3 volunteers here, maybe anybody, come on, anybody. 3 guys, come down, let's play some rhythm. Nobody needs, come on down. Another guy, I just give you an idea, nothing much. Nothing much. This was the bass. At the time, now we have 6 bass players now playing a booming bass and nice structured bass line. But at the time, all we had for the bass line in Trinidad was this, what we call the bass killer. Right? Okay, I'll tell you when to start. Next guy, this was the bass drum. Let me see that. Let me see the rhythm. Slower. Yes. One each like this. Right? Go ahead. Right. That was the bass, ladies and gentlemen. With the bass, or what we had at the time, was like what you have today, you call like your conga. This will punctuate the rhythm. So if you stand 10 blocks of the road, you get about 10 guys playing a drum like this with one single note. And the bass is going boom, 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 boom. And this guy's going like, go ahead. Keep going, okay? Right here. You come here, okay? But we, the island, know the pattern so well. we keep on that downbeat, but we don't ever think about what you do. We just play the rhythm. And then ultimately it was two notes all the time. Two notes on a downbeat and a bass scale, and then ultimately we can get three notes. Get the downbeat again. Right? And then we begin again out. Okay, now just bear in mind, we have 20 people in a yard carrying on with this racket, and no melody, nothing that makes sense. And you have this board like 24 hours a day. So the neighborhood will be so annoyed. The neighborhood will call the cops. And they will come in and they will take all the drums and smash them. And we will go around for the street and we will hunt the drums them again and start all over again. So this has gone on for years, from the early 30s into all the mid 40s, before the police began to get a little bit of ease. All this rocking is going on. Then ultimately, as this began to go, the drums begin to increase in size. And we have one we call a ping pong.
Did you teach you that rhythm there, and then you could add?
And you can do it, you can do it. Downbeat. We had some kind of celebration all year, every year from fact, there was a war taking place in Europe, the Second World War, and the government of the island stopped the carnival's proceeding due to the fact that it might feel that might be too many people of the island, one congregation, and it might have the Germans coming around with and killing a bunch of people. So therefore, carnival celebration was stopped in 1941, and during 1941 to 1944, I was in my backyard trying to develop the instrument from one stage to the other. So it moved along gradually from this to a little better instrument, but the same thing, just as it is, it was better quality. And during that period, we would have little contests in different theaters, and we go to theaters in the south, in the south, in the east, and the west of the island, and perform this drum. Perform a steel band. That's this kind of trash, and we play what we had at the time. And there was a contest that was supposed to take place in 1946. We had noticed for it quite a while. 1946. But in 1945, my barracuda was supposed to be the best from around for Australia. Everybody knows the barracuda. So we had what they called victory in Japan, May of 1945. So the government said to us, well, you have not been in parade for the last 4 years. I'm going to give you an opportunity to parade the streets in the night of May in 1945. I can't get the exact date. Anyway, we went to the street and parade, and I had my drum like this playing, and the band was marching, going up for us playing like this. And there was a big fighting up in front of the band. I don't know who started fighting, but tens of thousands of people on either side of the road and coming east to west, and we traveled opposite direction. And the fight began up front. So when I played my drum, and suddenly a rush of people came back on me, and my drum fell. Because I had it out, and my drum fell. And as it fell, somebody took it and I didn't know before. So I had no drum to play after I used my drum that night in 1945. I had no drum to play up this side. So I said to my friends, I'm not going to play that drum anymore. I'm going to play the big band. And everybody said it can't be done, it's too big, it's too heavy. They criticize, as usual. People always criticize when they don't know what is going on, or they can't see a vision of it, or have the idea for it. They will always criticize you. That's the fact of human nature. So I said, okay, I'm going to play that drum unknown to all of you. So what I did, I went on a big pavilion where they play cricket. You play baseball, you play football. In the island, you play cricket, or you play soccer. So in this big pavilion, there's a big tree in the back there. So I went under that tree every day, and took a small hammer and beat this drum down into what it is, 1945, 46. Beat it into the concave, and I put 14 notes on it. And you know, this is the first steel drum over 55 gallons I was ever built as a musical instrument. It is crude, the song is not good to talk about, but it's there, the melody is there, and the idea was there. And as every other form of science, in any form of technology or anything, you always start from somewhere, and you then develop as you go. And it's exactly what happened here. This drum was brought in 1946. And I had a concert to take place in Skinner's Park, a part of Fort Trinidad called Skinner's Park, in a big savannah. So I walk up on stage with my drum in a little bag, a little crocus bag, a brown bag. And I always make a joke with people and say, this was the first steel drum case ever. It's a little brown bag that I have. I walk up the stage with a drum in a bag like this, and everybody had a big move in the audience, and everybody moving. What's that? Because everybody was on stage with those things, and Ellie Mannette walks on stage with this big thing. And when I came on stage, I sat on a chair like this, and I played with one hand, like, you know. And I played, I don't know if I can play it right now, but I played a little song called Brahms' Lullaby. And in the first song, I said to you, and the parts of it, it will be documented in Trinidad. The first song that ever played on as a melody coming from a steel drum like this is the Brahms' Lullaby. There's nothing much, and the drum doesn't sound good, but as I said, there's always a beginning to everything. So, concert or anywhere in the world as a 55-gallon drum, playing a melody. I played out on stage just like this. And then, as a result of playing this drum was so different from the other drum, the concert hall, everybody in the theater came rushing on stage. For that matter, the concert ended like there was such excitement up there for people to sit it out to see this drum play for the first time. They crowd with the instrument and everybody's looking at it. And it's nothing much, but bear in mind, it's nothing much to us now, but at the time it was a big thing, because nothing like it's ever been played as a melody, you know. We have no ideas of how to control these overtones that is creating this nonsense here. But as I said, it began here and I kept it and ultimately I developed this. Now, when this was played and people came on stage and threw a lot of money in my drum like this, you know, I was so happy, a young boy, have a bunch of money in my drum. Anyway, I went home and I got to my father's backyard on a Saturday morning and I started playing the yard and a lot of newspaper people and people from the press, everybody's coming to see the drum. And then a lady from the radio called Olive Walk, she had a radio program on Radio Trinidad and said, Ellie, could you come to Radio Trinidad and play this drum for the nation to hear what it is? Because nobody knows about it except who was in the concert. So I went to Trinidad radio station on that morning in September, I can't tell you exactly, of 1945, and I played Ave Maria and that. Just imagine that is such nonsense to us now. Well, at the time the nation heard this over the radio, they heard a steel drum playing a melody of Ave Maria. So I played out on the radio station in 1945. And then I got home and then I began to get ideas. Well, if I can make a melody from a 55-gallon drum, then I should be able to make an accompaniment. So 1946, 47, I made a single second, which was accompaniment for this, 1947. And in 1948, I made a single guitar, well, I made one with a deeper voice. So I have three voices now. I have the steel, the melody. I have one drum playing a single second instead of two drums we have today. I have one drum playing a single second and one drum playing the guitar. And in 1949, the government of the island, which was run by the British at the time, Sir Hubert Rance, that was the governor of the island, he called me to the government house and said to me that, what's your age? I said, what schooling do you have? I said, high school and so on. He said, well, I want to send you to London to study music. Do you have any music in you? I said, no. He said, we want to send you to London to study music that you can enhance this art form for the nation because there is something new to the world. So I want to send you to London to study. So we formed a group in 1950 due to the fact that the art form began to blossom. The government of Trinidad and Tobago wanted to expose this instrument to the world. So there was a fair in London in 1950, they called it World Fair. And they took us to London, they gathered the whole group, 10 of us, and they took us to Paris, to London, to play at the Dorchester, at the King's Court, at the Salvages, at the Big Temple, Waterloo Bridge, and Buckingham Palace. We played everywhere. And this street band had been formed in Trinidad, but only was as good as it is at the time. And then during the time I was there, I went to the university and I told them that I had a scholarship. And they looked it up and they said, yes, your name is here for scholarship. And what are your requirements you have to bring, your grades and whatnot. So I spoke to my friends, I don't want to take this scholarship. But let me say to you guys, if you get a scholarship, don't worry, Ellie Mannette, you take your scholarship. Because Ellie Mannette gambled. And he succeeded. But I could have gambled and then lose out. But I would say to college students, all I do all the time, take your scholarship and finish your education properly before you branch off into anything else. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you can. The Steel Drum story is such in depth and it's so much that I speak to you for hours and you'll get tired to listen to me. And as I'm trying to rush through it as quickly as I can and paint you a picture you don't understand. But there's so much that I will not be able to tell you because you get time, surely. What I have to do for math really is to maybe sit down with math or your teacher and put a videotape of the entire steel band's evolution for them in detail. And as a result, in some given time in a class setting, they can play that for you. And you can hear all my statement about the building and the construction, the fabrication and the depth skirt and the skirt length, and it's so many things you will never believe. So when I'm giving you a lecture, I'm giving you an idea of how the outcome developed from trash to what we have. And in England, I came back to the island in 1951, and as soon as I got back with a little bit more knowledge, I decided to develop a double second instead of one. Double second in 52, and double guitar in 54. Now I play guitar. So I began to develop the instrument and it began to spread. And everybody began to observe my work. And as a result of that, other people began to join me, like Tony Williams and Good Market. Name that as I said to you again, if I call all the names and all the time, I don't know how long the lecture will take. You know that. I understand how kids are. They want to know about the drums at the same time they get tired quickly. So anyway, I came back and I developed the lead first, then I developed the double second, and I developed double guitars, and then turned into triple guitars, then I developed the cellos, then I developed the tenor bass, then I developed the bass drums that we have today, then the last instrument I have developed is one we call the quadrec, you all have about it here. So my creation is 7 out of 10. We have a family of 10 instruments today. We have the lowly and the spiderweb. Ellie Mannette did the lowly, Tony Williams did the spiderweb. We have the double second and the double tenor. Ellie Mannette did the double second and Butch Marshall did the double tenor. And then we have the guitars and the cellos, Ellie Mannette work. And we have something called a quadrophonic, which is done by one of the guys called Rudolph Shaw. And then I did the other drum, like the bass drum, and the tenor bass drums, and the quadruet set. So the instrument I've developed is 7 out of 10. Now, we have the voices. I give you a breakdown. We have the voices of the instrument. We have the orchestra form to some extent. We don't know where it's going to go from here. We have to include science, and science is going to come in. But ladies and gentlemen, the young people, I want you to always bear in mind that this is a very unique instrument. The characteristics is unique of any other instrument. When you play one note, every other note vibrates. And if you play simultaneously, you get harmonic relation, which hardly any other instrument can do. With 2 notes, only you get voices on. And hardly any instrument today, the keyboard. If you play like 2 notes on the keyboard right now, C and F sharp, or G and C sharp, you will not get that the amount of notes played, because harmonic relations are playing with each other here. And this is something that we have to bear in mind. We have to keep this. The science may come in today and say, okay, let's clean this up, and let's clean it up, and let's make it proper material and whatever. But then it will destroy the overtone, the character of the overtone that made the steel drum was played. Because every steel drum is played in any orchestra today, and a steel drum line just cut in. Right away you will observe it, and you will say that's a steel drum. That is something that we have to maintain and have to keep. I'm jumping my story because I don't want to burden you with the progress is so, slow and lazy and moves. I don't want to bore you with, so I'm jumping my story to make it interesting. What we do today is have the art form with metallurgists, chemists, physicists, engineers, and coming up with a design that we don't have to work so hard to build it from. We are in the process of doing that right now. And a lot is being done behind the scenes to make it work easier. With regard to the quality of sound, we're going to do the best we could with regard to the quality, but there's only so much we can do because the instrument we work with today is a strobe. It only measures the vibration. It doesn't give you a lot of different character of really what sophistication is. So some of these things we have to look at in detail. We cannot burden the instrument too much with science because we lose it, but we have to have science to improve it. The young people I am training today at the university, they're going to take it over. Ellie Mannette is going to start on the sideline, but they young people are going to take it and they're going to make it better. Every other form of science, it starts and it grows. And I don't know where it's going to end. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot say. It began in 1945. 50, whatever years, I cannot tell you. But we expect 25 years from now it's going to change. Kids, let me say this. I show the pictures on the wall because you might have an idea in your mind of young people, and somebody might try to turn you away from that idea. So long as you have an idea, as a young person your age right now, and you're very decisive on that idea, you should not let anybody turn you away from that idea. The idea must be making sense. It should not be something that is nonsense. Whatever idea you have in your mind that you feel is going to make sense, stick with it and work with it until you make it happen. Because when I was playing trash, and the slander that I got, and the criticism, and the obstacles, and the red tapes, and the roadblocks, and the hurdles that I had to turn, there's no way in the world that if I did not have that determination that I'm trying to instill in your mind, if I didn't have that determination to finish any desire, I would not have accomplished, because I would have been carried away by all sorts of nonsense. No, do this and do that. Someone else is always going to tell you what you should do, and because they don't see the man, the vision that you have. I created that, and ultimately I found myself in the limelight of the world today. I've been invited to be the Queen of England. I've been given the National Endowment for the Art. I have been given the Golden National Key of the National Country Golden Key Award. I have got a key from Port Spain. I've been called to the White House. I was said to my friend. I was called to speak over the BBC broadcasting live. That Ellie Mannette will want to speak to you live over the BBC network. I have done symposium for the National Science Organization from around the world. 1,000 and 2,000 scientists from around the world gathered in Cancun, Mexico, and asked Ellie Mannette to chair the symposium to show and to discuss the musical instrument of the Western Hemisphere. And they had my book and magazine that spread through the world for over a year. My picture on the head of it, like an ebony magazine, but a book of science and technology of musical instruments. All this has been accomplished at Smithsonian and the Metropolitan Museum and Contemporary Art Galleries. And if I have my life to live here, I will do the same, as I said to Mark and other people. If I did take my education in London, I might have been teaching as Mark is teaching today, which is a great profession. And any of my friends are only contemporary. They teach and they have this great profession. Ellie Mannette might have been doing the same. But I made tens of thousands of young people in this country and around the world. I have been to Paris last 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and I've had an ovation from groups in Europe that I would never even imagine. They gave me goosebumps. They had groups from Germany, from France, from Britain, from Hungary, from Poland, Sweden, Switzerland, Norway. And I was in a big Coliseum and they called a special guest and said, we have a very special guest, the creator of the steel band and so on so. And when I walked out on the podium with the mayor of the city and that audience and a big balcony, they stood up, they were there. And they stood up and everybody did like this, like that, like this. I couldn't believe I get like goosebumps, So I said, I have struggled to make this thing happen. And I have accomplished. And now I'm deciding to train people to do it and to make it happen, to go ahead. So I give a little story of what happened and how it came. I don't want to go through the details for how the drum is played. All I can say is there are 8 stages involved. 8 stages involved. You can have a steel drum from A to Z. 8 stages. And you have to have like a sixth sense. You have to have mind, hand, and coordination. Hearing, craftsmanship, everything. I have suffered a lot into the album. I gained a lot of success. I suffered a lot also. I have success and I have failure. And some of my failures, the success outweigh the failure. I have great amount of ability to work with my hand. I meet a lot of people. I lost my family due to falling off the drum. I lost a little hearing. But overall, as I said, the success was better than my failure. And I will do it again. Now, the drum that I played for you, and I showed you, bear in mind that this is from the horse's mouth. This is not anything that anybody has read. I have not read, I have not heard, I have not seen. I developed. And all I speak today job for someone, no one can do any better. I want to pass that skill on to the young people so they will be able to do it better. I play a little bit for you, not much, because as I said, this is an instrument for more the rhythm, patterns, and melody, but I play a little bit. I could be a great builder, but my ability to play is not me. I'm not a great player. I'm going to play a little bit of Louis Bonfart. He played a song they call Gentle Rain. Watching over Gentle Rain. And I'm going to move it over to Bonfart again. He plays Black Orpheus. So I tell a little bit for you and probably take a couple of questions that night. And I don't want to go into more detail because I don't want to get into trial. Okay? So Gentle Rain, go to
Thank you.
I played a little, and I'm not a great player, as I said. I'll say it again and again. with Humber, as a youngster playing trash, and I want to go up with the band. I came in very simple, and I want to go up with the band. What I want to do. I have been building drums of people around the United States of high quality for years and years. And I want to bring back all the people that I've worked for, and maybe additional people, into one big auditorium in the very near future. We have been working on it right now. And I want the finest music written for the drums. I want to bring a symphony conductor, a real symphony conductor. And I want to bring the people on a venue where they can rehearse for a week before this big event. And that evening, when I will retire, that evening, I'm going to go through the steel band and its evolution from the African talking drums to the tambour band, to the trash can, into the pan around the neck. And at the end of that process, I'm going to say, ladies and gentlemen, here I present the symphony that I've always had in mind as a young man. Here is the symphony of steel that I always envisioned, conducted by whoever. And I want about 150 people play the finest steel drum that Ellie Mannette ever built. I want it done in a big venue where we can hold a couple thousand people as visitors, and we want to have an auditorium where we can hold 20 sets of guitars and 10 sets of bass drums, and whatever it could comprise of 150 players on stage. That evening, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever attend that evening, I can get it in my head right now, it will be something that you will live with you for the rest of your life. Because the sound will be immense. The sound of that orchestra will be 10 times as any orchestra, conventional orchestra today. Because the music will be written, and what I want to do that evening, I want to write songs. Some of my music will be played. As I said to Mark, many people around the country, I'm not a great musician by theory. I can hardly read the sheet, but I can compose very well. I can really arrange very well. So what I'm going to do for this instrument, I'm going to arrange a few songs for that major evening, and the Ellie Mannette arrangement for the voices he has created. This is how we expect it to be played, and this is what's going to be done. And of course, along with that, I'm going to have calypsos, and I'm going to have African drumming, and I'm going to have the big symphony with proper written music from some major masters of music. I don't know which one I'm going to select. But that evening will be an evening we will remember for the rest of their life, if you ever attend. And that will be done within 2 years from today. Because we have several professors around the nation today that's looking at it. And we have to raise grant money from different people because it will cost a lot of money to bring all the people that I have to expect to play, to bring them around the nation on one part, house them and feed them and train them and for them to rehearse for the week before this presentation. It will take money for promotion, but we are working on it now. So Ellie Mannette comes in humble. Ellie Mannette is going to go up with the band. So
development of the balance, now that's an interesting story because when they were first built.
Well, as I mentioned before, it's so much about the story that I do a lot of lectures, and I look at young people, and I see when they begin to get tired, and I begin to piss around in the seats a little. So I try to break up the lectures and appropriately, so I wouldn't get you too disgusted and too bored. I know that, you gotta prove it. No one. So I know when you begin to get tired, you went for an hour or more and everybody there, we're going to do. So that's why I said I didn't want to go through all the in-depth, but I round the first sticks ever in the history of the art. Because when we first started to play wooden stick, harsh and loud and hard, 1943 could be recorded in the documentation. 1943, I rounded the first stick with a bicycle in a tree. And that's documented in Trinidad Archive. Because when I got my doctorate from a read out my story, and he said, anyone that dropped the 46 and 1943. So that's 42. Yeah.
And what happened prior to that, like I said, they were using wooden pieces of broom handles. And so, of course, that was very caustic and very coarse sounding. And so Ellie said they would sort of beat out the tips of the broom handle, try to make it a little softer. And that was too soft. And so when he came up with wrapping the stick with a rubber, that was the best use of having a shaft and having something soft on it.
Yes, I can mention to you how the drum was born, how it was taken up, and how the six was done with a wooden stick, a boom handle, playing harsh. And you can see it in the picture, they're playing wooden sticks. And we put the wooden sticks on top of a piece of iron and beat it like this and flatten it out and make it soft. And when you play, it was kind of making a homemade. So there were so many stages we went through to develop this, from the stick playing to the hanging of the drum. The hanging of the drum was another story in itself. So it's so much I can tell you that.
Well, I think one thing I'd like to make sure that, which is an interesting item in the development of the instrument, because Ellie and his contemporaries didn't know about the whole idea of chromatic, and that's, the succession of notes from C to C sharp. And so the only way they knew about what they wanted to play was through the songs that they wanted to play. So they would build an instrument, they would play a couple of songs that they knew, and then when they tried to play another song that may have other notes on it, and they couldn't play it on their drum, they had to scrap that drum and build a new one. But then remember what the tones they had on that first drum. Remember the new tones that they were hearing from the new song, and put those new tones on this new drum, and then build the drum again, and then play. And so, if you can imagine, how painstaking that was. When Ellie mentioned his trip to England, when they gathered a group of the best players in Trinidad in the 1950s to go to tour the Festival of Britain, that was when Ellie first learned the whole idea of chromatic. They had a band conductor work with them, and he said, don't you know there's something called chromatic? And all the guys were like pretty shocked. So, but that was how they developed, the voice.
One story that I could give you is to make you laugh a bit. In Trinidad at the time, we could not get the virus available because they were hidden away by shell company, oil company would not give you a barrel. So we go to the Navy base. There was a big Navy base in Stradivarius, about 12 miles away from Port of Spain. And we would climb the fence at night and swim out in the ocean to get these drums and steal the Navy drums by 30, 40, 50 a year, more than that. Steal the Navy drums. And I was sure that they're going to catch us one day. So one day I was in my yard working on a Navy drum that I stole last night. And I saw the Navy drum put outside. And I took off and climbed the fence. And I started to run. So the guy said to me, "Are you Ellie Mannette?" So I said, "What do you want?" He's standing over in the big Navy gun, because I know we're stealing his drum last night. So I said, "What do you want?" He said, "Are you Ellie Mannette?" I said, "What do you want?" I wouldn't answer. So he said, "I'm here looking for Ellie Mannette. The Admiral wanted him on the Navy base." I said, "Why you want him on the base for what?" So he said, "Come on, there's nothing to be afraid of. Come on." So I was kind of scared, real scared, because stealing the drums and see this Navy band put up there, I know there's nothing laughing at. So I walked slowly like this to the van, and they put me in the van. They took me down to the Navy base in Chaguaramas, and they put me on a phone. Somebody called from Puerto Rico. I said, "Ellie Mannette," I said, "Admiral is down in the gallery." And I understand that you're stealing my drums, So I didn't want to answer that. I said, yes, so they said, "Well, what I want you to do for stealing my drums, I want you to build a band for the Navy. I want the Navy Steel Band for the band. I want you to build a band for the Navy Steel Band." And I built the Navy Steel Band in 1957. And I worked with the Navy Steel Band for 41 years. And
they really just
about 3 hours.
They just stopped.
It just stopped for the last one. The sleep is still for a while. I don't know if they regenerate, but right now they cut it down. The finances down to the performance of that. So I stole the drums, and again, all I was promotion for the attitude, the Navy promoting the band across the country around the world. So, Ellie Mannette did this thing, as I said, I didn't want to tie in all my lectures. I will take 10,000 feet that I didn't see yesterday because the story is there in my mind. I don't read it from a script. Many a time I see a politician read from a script. I say, why did he have to read from a script? He doesn't know his subject or what. I know my subject so well that I can tell you the story 1,000 times. I might use different words, but it's amongst the same thing. It's what amongst the same because the story is real. The story is not good or it's real. I lived it and I tell you. So, you got a question for that?
Yes.
What determines how to decide to organize, the
The patterns, how did you come up with what? The diminished chords?
I dreamt it. When I say I dreamt it, I was building the drums. I had 4 tools at the time. And I had 2 drums of guitar. And I wanted, because I always think about more voicing. And I was laying one night, the young man lay down, and I saw a picture of the cello. I got up in the middle of the night. I get over the table, my father is dead now, but he could talk today. I go over the table and I started scratching the notes down. As I saw it in my dream, I scratched it down. And I saw it going on this, that. I didn't even know what the minute was. And I put all the notes on the paper and I had it in front of me, 3 drums. And I was working in a machine shop, the young boy, doing machine work. And on the way going, I'm looking at his paper and I said, I'm going to steal 3 drums from somewhere that I want to build what I have on my paper. And I got it wrong and I started working. People say, what are you doing now, Ellie? I say, I'm building something, I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but I'm building something. And then as I work on the process of what I have in the paper, and I work, ultimately when I got it, I started a song like, your age. It wasn't beautiful, but it was giving it some age. And I say, I'm going to call this the cello, because I listen to classical music as a young man in my bed. All the time, listen to classical music, as Kaethe said, which has me caused me to develop the instrument. And by listening to classical music, I heard the instrument play, that cello. And I said, I've got to build that instrument in my mind. And as I developed this drum from a drawer, and I tuned it, I found it was sounding like the cello, like in a record that I heard. So I called it the cello. So that's how I got the diminished part. And a lot of the drums, I don't know what I did.
Well, and I know that Ellie mentioned to me that he really didn't learn that if they were diminished
No.
on the seconds or whole tone
No.
or augmented until like the early 70s when he was working with a musician, a music teacher. And the music teacher pointed it out to him and said, well, do you know that you've got a diminished pattern on your, so Ellie was like, what's that? So.
I really didn't know. But I said I was a musician by theory, and I put the notes on the drums, and different musicians would come and say, wait a minute, you have a whole tone and augmented on the second. Check it out. You got to augment here day, augment here day. And I never noticed that.
And the cellos were, keep in mind, the cellos were made or designed in the 50s, in the late 50s. He didn't learn anything about what the patterns were until the 70s.
Yes, I really didn't know, because that's bad. If you take your second time out, my second time, and you cut the drum 100% in half, directly in half like this, you're going to get G augmented up here and F augmented underneath. If you cut the other side in half, you're going to get G sharp augmented and F sharp augmented underneath. And I never knew that I had that there. F augmented, F sharp augmented, G augmented, G sharp augmented, directly across the drum. So if I could tell anybody that was setting out, designed that, there's no way that I could have seen that picture. And when the guy said, do you have diminished on the drum? I said, what are you talking about? What diminished? And he said, look at all the patterns they say. So I really don't know. I have to say it's a God's gift that I have born with. And as I get older, it has been developed in my mind, and the picture was there. And I don't want to say it's like Ellie Mannette has a creative mind. And as Kaethe said, you have to come in contact with creators very fine tune between. And there's no babies about it. I am a creator. I did not copy these instruments. I did not see it in any catalog and no magazine. I created the instrument that day from nothing. So what if you don't call it creation, I don't know what to call it. And that's about it. Fortunate to be the person that's still alive to be able to tell you young people about it. Very fortunate to be alive.